When Mia stepped out of her tiny one-bedroom apartment that morning, she had no idea her entire life would be flipped upside down by a single lie. A lie that started with a borrowed tuxedo and ended with a man buying the restaurant where she scrubbed floors for minimum wage. But what no one tells you is this: when you rent a stranger to impress your family, you'd better pray they don't start playing the role a little too well. Because Mia didn't just hire a man, she invited a ghost into her past and someone else's future. Let me take you back, not to where it began, but to where she realized it had all gone too far. The first sign came at her mother's birthday dinner. The family had already gathered. Her cousins, smug in their designer clothes. Her sister, already drunk on white wine and passive aggression. And her uncle, the same man who once told Mia she'd never make it past Waitress. They were all there, waiting, judging, measuring, and that's when he walked in, dressed in a sleek, navy suit, not flashy, but devastatingly sharp, a Rolex that looked real, shoes polished like mirrors, eyes like they'd seen things no small-town table could ever imagine. Her entire family turned, and Mia smiled. "This is Damon," she said. "My boyfriend." But Damon didn't just play the part. He owned the room, shook her father's hand with confidence, complimented the wine choice, helped her niece with her napkin, laughed at the right moments, to perfect, to controlled, almost professional, because he was. Mia had found him on a discreet website. Rent a date, $500, for 5 hours. No questions, no touching, no real names, except he used his real name, or at least, that's what she thought. Dr. Lauren Keene, a behavioral psychologist who studies high-stakes deception, explained in an interview, "Sometimes, the people we hire to play roles in our lives are better at it than we are. They're actors, of necessity, survivors, and in some rare cases, predators," with a smile. Mia wasn't thinking about that. She was thinking about how her mother's eyes lit up for the first time in years. About how no one rolled their eyes at her anymore. About how Damon had casually mentioned he'd been to Italy, and her uncle almost choked on his steak. She was winning, finally. But here's the thing. Winners don't usually get mystery texts 2 days later that say, "You shouldn't have brought me there." She thought it was a mistake. Maybe Damon had second thoughts. Maybe it was part of the post-date protocol. So she replied, "What do you mean?" But Damon never responded. Not until 3 weeks later, when he walked into her restaurant, unannounced, wearing the same navy suit, ordering a glass of red, and staring her straight in the eyes when he said, "Let's not pretend this was just a job." That's when Mia's world cracked. Because Damon wasn't acting. He never was. And what she didn't know was that the man she thought she rented was about to make her choose between the truth and everything she'd ever wanted. But before she could open her mouth, he pulled something out of his pocket that changed everything. It wasn't a ring. It wasn't a check. It wasn't even a love letter. What Damon pulled out of his pocket was a blue folder. Standard, unremarkable, except for the embossed logo on the front. One Mia recognized instantly. BAYVIEW Holdings. It was the parent company of the very restaurant where she worked. Inside, purchase documents, with his signature. That's when Damon said it, calmly, like he was just ordering dessert. "As of today, I own this place." Mia felt the room spin. Her apron still hung around her waist. The scent of fryer oil clung to her clothes. She looked down at her own hands, still damp from scrubbing dishes, and across from her stood the man she thought she'd paid $500 to pretend. Now her boss. Now the owner, now the biggest lie she'd ever told. Standing there, impossibly real. Rewind 3 weeks. After the birthday dinner, Damon vanished. No calls. No messages. Nothing. Mia assumed he'd just moved on to the next client. She even rated him 5 stars. Left a kind review. Professional, charming, totally convincing. A week later, she received an automatic notification. Your payment was refunded. That refund, she thought, was some kind of glitch. But now, standing in front of her former fake boyfriend turned owner of her workplace, she realized he hadn't taken the money because he never needed it. Marcus Hale, a fictional business columnist who'd profiled dozens of under-the-radar moguls, described Damon like this. He's what we call a ghost investor. Operates in plain sight, but owns everything through shell cores, restaurants, clubs, small chains. He plays the long game, and he always has an angle. So what was Damon's angle with Mia? Why her? Why now? She demanded answers. But Damon didn't give her any, not at first. Instead, he offered her a promotion to assistant manager. Effective immediately. She laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was insane. Was this some kind of twisted joke? A power move? A game? But Damon's face didn't flinch. This isn't charity, he said. You're the only one who actually cares about this place. And then he walked out, leaving the blue folder, and Mia's heartbeat echoing louder than the kitchen buzzers behind her. That night, she didn't sleep. She combed through Google, LinkedIn, Reddit. Nothing on Damon with his last name. But when she reverse searched his photo, she found a blog post from 4 years ago. A story buried deep in a hospitality tech forum. A man named Damon Carter had bought out a failing Italian restaurant in Chicago, rebranded it, hired the wait staff as stakeholders, turned it into a Michelin-starred sensation. The article ended with one line. Mr. Carter declined to comment. He prefers to let the food and the people speak for themselves. 2 days later, Mia accepted the promotion, not because she trusted him, not because she forgave him, but because curiosity burns hotter than pride. And Damon knew that, because the next time she saw him, he wasn't in a suit. He was in an apron, washing dishes, right next to her, learning the place. He said, and when she looked into his eyes, she saw something terrifying. Not romance, not guilt, not manipulation. She saw recognition, like he'd known her all along. And what Mia didn't realize, what she couldn't have known, was that this entire story didn't start with her rental. It started with his search, a search that began long before she ever clicked book now. Porca Verdade. Mia wasn't just playing pretend. She was already part of someone else's plan, and that plan was just getting started. The first time Mia saw Damon mop the floors, it felt like a glitch in reality. A man in $1,000 shoes wiping grease from tiles. Not for optics, not for a photo op, but because he meant it. He never explained why he was doing it. He didn't need to, because what he wasn't saying said everything. Backtrack again. Not to the first night. Not even to the restaurant. Go further. 2 months before she ever heard the name Damon Carter, Mia had nearly quit. Twice. Once after being passed over for a promotion by a manager who couldn't name 3 things on the menu. The second time when a customer threw a drink in her face because his steak was medium instead of medium rare. And when she told the owner, He offered her a towel and docked her pay for the wasted dish. She'd had enough. She drafted a resignation letter, wrote it, printed it, folded it, but never delivered it. Instead, she folded it into her apron, kept it there as a reminder. She still had the power to walk away, but she didn't. Not then. Because somewhere, deep down, Mia was waiting for a sign that it was all going to turn around. Enter Damon Carter, who never admitted how he knew where to find her, never admitted why that restaurant, never explained how a multimillionaire CEO ends up on a rent-a-date site. So Mia did what anyone in her position would do. She followed him, not literally, digitally, every name, every company, every holding, every trace. And something strange happened. The more she searched, the less she found. Dr. Naomi Wexler, a fictional cybertrace investigator, said in a pretend interview, "Men like Damon Carter are anomalies. They leave just enough behind to seem real, but not enough to be understood. It's intentional. Their past is curated. Every move is a controlled reveal." And Damon was revealing. Just enough. He'd joke with the staff, helped the line cook, fix a busted fridge, learned the names of regulars, even started showing up before Mia. But he never flirted, never touched her, never even hinted at their fake date night. Which made her wonder, had she imagined the chemistry, or was he playing a longer game? Then came the night of the plumbing disaster. A pipe burst. Water flooded the kitchen. Everyone panicked. Everyone but Damon. He took charge like a general, called in a crew, got hands dirty, saved the food, kept the power running. When Mia asked how he knew what to do, he finally gave her a real answer. "This isn't my first kitchen disaster," he said, brushing grime from his sleeves. And then, quietly, as he looked right at her, "You were never supposed to see any of this." That sentence echoed for days. You were never supposed to see any of this. Mia knew it wasn't just about the pipe. It was about him. About the truth. He was slipping, letting her peek behind the mask, one layer at a time. But the most shocking layer was her own, because Mia was changing. She wasn't the girl who'd faked a relationship to impress her family anymore. She wasn't waiting tables for tips she didn't even count. She was stepping into something bigger, and Damon knew it. That's why he invited her to the roof that night. "There's something you need to hear," he said. She followed him up the back stairwell, past the storage room, through the fire exit. The city lights flickered below. He handed her a file, thicker than the last one. Inside were photos. Not of restaurants, not of documents, of her, from years ago. Candid shots, street markets, family dinners. One from high school graduation. "I've known about you for longer than you think." Mia's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean?" she asked. And Damon, for the first time, looked afraid, not for himself, for her. "Because you remind me of someone I lost." Before she could speak, he walked away, leaving her with the file and 1,000 questions. And what Mia would soon discover is that the person he lost wasn't gone at all. For days, Mia stared at the photos. Same girl, same smile, different angles, different years. All hers, but none taken by her. And that's when she noticed something terrifying. In the corner of one picture, a birthday party at her uncle's house. A figure, tall, dark, blurry in motion, wearing the same watch Damon wore to her mom's dinner. This didn't start at Rent-A-Date. This didn't start when she clicked book now. It started years before she ever knew who Damon Carter was. before she realized that her life had already been watched. Let's rewind. 1 year before, Mia had volunteered at a local soup kitchen every other weekend. A promise she'd made after losing her father. Make time for those no one sees, he used to say. And she did. But there had been a man, a quiet, regular, never ate, only helped. She never caught his name, but he once helped her carry boxes. And she remembered his hands. Rough knuckles, faint burn marks, a scar across his left palm. The same scar Damon had. Lara Quinn, a fictional memory expert often used in courtroom testimony, explains, memory doesn't record everything. It records meaning. A scar, a smell, a gesture. Those things stay. And when two timelines collide, the brain does something remarkable. It connects the thread. Mia's thread was catching fire. She confronted Damon the next night, waited until after closing, found him alone in the office, sleeves rolled, tie loose. How long have you been watching me? He didn't flinch. Long enough to know you're not like them. Them who? The ones who settle. The ones who stop fighting. Mia stood her ground. Why me? And Damon finally told her the truth. Or a version of it. 7 years ago, I invested in a restaurant in Brooklyn. It failed. I lost everything. Investors, reputation, almost my name. Except there was one waitress who stayed. Took a second job to help cover payroll. Never asked for anything. He pulled out a crumpled pay stub. You signed it. Mia froze that it was hers. From a job she barely remembered. A summer gig. She thought it was just a paycheck. You were the only one who didn't run, he said. And I never forgot. But if that were true, why didn't he say anything sooner? Why fake a date? Why lie? Damon didn't answer directly. Instead, he asked her a question. What if I told you this restaurant, this job, everything you think is yours, was never about food or business? What was it about then? He looked her dead in the eyes. It was about watching someone become what they were always meant to be. And that's when Mia understood. He didn't just buy the restaurant. He built the trap. For her. Not out of cruelty, but because he believed something she didn't yet. That she was capable of more. But belief without consent is still manipulation. And Mia wasn't sure whether to be flattered or afraid. The next morning, she found her apron gone in its place. A black box, and inside, a key, and a note that read, when you're ready to stop surviving, come find me at the one place you swore you'd never return. There was only one place that could be. A place she'd buried, along with the truth about who she used to be. And Mia knew, if she turned that key, there'd be no going back. There are places in life that hold more than memories. They hold ghosts. For Mia, that place was Hollow Pine Inn, a crumbling bed and breakfast her parents had once owned before the foreclosure. The same place where she learned how to sweep, serve, and hide her tears all before turning 16. The same place she swore she'd never step foot in again. So when she held the key in her hand and saw the address scribbled beneath the note, her blood ran cold. Back then, Hollow Pine wasn't just her childhood home. It was her wound. After her dad passed, the debt collectors came fast. Her mother sank into silence. Mia begged the bank for more time. Even offered to waitress at nearby restaurants to help pay bills. They laughed, and when the family was evicted, she blamed herself. Hollow Pine was boarded up, forgotten, left to rot, just like the dream. And yet, here she was now, standing before its rusted gate, the key cold in her palm, the note still tucked in her jacket. She turned the lock. The gate creaked open, and nothing could have prepared her for what she saw inside. The walls were scrubbed, windows replaced, garden replanted, and in the foyer, a table set for two at the center, a photograph of her family before the fall, and next to it, a folded newspaper. On the front page, reclusive CEO to reopen historic Hollow Pine Inn. The article was dated 2 weeks earlier, and the photo Damon, smiling. Henry Vale, a fictional investigative journalist who'd written about secret luxury property takeovers, describes cases like this. We've seen billionaires buy estates for romance, revenge, legacy. But this, restoring a location tied to someone else's trauma, that's not business. That's obsession. Or something worse. Mia stepped through the house in silence. Every detail was surgical. He'd studied her, not just her habits, her history. She walked into the dining room. The old chandelier glowed. On the table, a handwritten journal, first page. Mia, you were never invisible. You were never ordinary. You were always the answer. She nearly dropped it. Was this still about business? About gratitude? Or was she caught in something she didn't understand? As she turned the pages, one line stood out. I built the trap, but you had the key all along. Her chest tightened. That night, she sat on the porch until dawn, staring at the horizon, waiting for the sound of a car, a footstep, anything. But no one came. Damon had left her a place, a story, a question, but no answers. Until she received the envelope. It came by courier, unmarked, and inside was a single ticket to Verona, Italy, and a name she hadn't heard since she was 12, Luciano. It was her father's best friend, a man she thought had died years ago. But Damon's message was clear. To know who I am, you have to know who your father really was. Mia packed a bag not because she believed it, but because she needed to know how far back this rabbit hole really went, and what Damon had been planning all along. Verona wasn't just another city. It was the place where her father had disappeared for 6 months when Mia was 8. She never knew why. No postcards, no phone calls, only the whispered argument between her parents the night he returned. You should have never gone back to him. Mia had buried that memory, but now it was clawing its way to the surface. When she landed in Italy, a man held a sign. Hollow. He didn't speak much, just drove her through narrow streets, past vineyards and stone villas, and finally, to a small, sunlit cafe on the edge of a lake. Waiting at the table was a man with silver hair, deep lines on his face, and eyes that studied her like she was a puzzle he'd waited years to solve. You look like your father, he said in accented English. Luciano. He poured wine without asking, offered no pleasantries. You think Damon found you by accident? He asked. Mia stayed silent. He didn't. Then he slid a folder across the table. Inside were surveillance photos. Damon in New York. Damon in Chicago. Damon in Hollow Pine. From 10 years ago. He was looking for your father, but he found you instead. Flashback. Hollow Pine Inn, 2012. A storm raged outside. Mia, then 20, watched through the kitchen window as a black car pulled into the gravel lot. A man stepped out, looked around, then drove off. She never saw his face. Until now. It had been Damon. Even then. Dr. Theo Krantz, a fictional expert in behavioral surveillance, explains, obsession doesn't always begin with love or lust. Sometimes it starts with debt, with loyalty, with unfinished business passed down like a ghost. Luciano lit a cigarette with shaky hands. Your father was part of something. Not just then. Something bigger. He tapped the folder. Inside was a business charter from 1995. Founders: Richard Hollow, her father Luciano Bianchi, and one more name: Damon Carter. Mia's heart skipped. That wasn't possible. Damon would have been a teenager. Unless he wasn't your father's partner, Luciano said quietly. He was his son. The cafe spun around her. They built the first Hollow Pine together. A boutique chain. Quiet. Luxurious. Secret. Luciano leaned in. Your father walked away after your mother got sick. Damon didn't. Why didn't anyone tell me? Mia whispered. Luciano's voice cracked. Because your father made us promise. He wanted you safe. He knew Damon wouldn't stop until he rebuilt what they lost. Mia stood up, walked out of the cafe, onto the cobblestone street. Tears blurred her eyes, but her mind raced. Damon wasn't just some billionaire. He was family. Blood. Tangled in her history like a root beneath the surface. That night, at the guest house, she found a gift on her bed. Wrapped in velvet. No tag. Inside, a gold locket. With two photos. Her father on one side. Damon, younger, on the other. And a note. It was never just about the restaurant. It was about finishing what he started. The next morning, Mia tried to leave. But the driver was gone. Her phone? Dead. And outside the window, a black car she didn't recognize. Parked. Waiting. Because now, someone else knew she was here. The black car didn't move. It just sat there. Idle. Waiting. Watching. Mia's instinct screamed. This wasn't Damon. This was something else. She double-checked the windows. Locked every door. Searched the guest house for anything resembling a weapon, a wine bottle, a curtain rod, a letter opener. She was alone, and for the first time since the lie began, she was truly afraid. Flashback. Her father used to say, "The people you trust least are the ones who wait quietly until the room is empty." She didn't understand that then. She did now. She dialed the number Luciano had written on a napkin. His backup line, no answer. Only static. Mia's mind raced. Why bring her to Italy? Why tell her everything? Only to disappear. Unless Luciano had lied to Dr. Sadie Marsh, a fictional trust psychologist often quoted in elite security circles. Once wrote, "When multiple parties invest in your truth, it becomes a currency, and everyone wants a cut, even those who claim they're trying to protect you." Mia knew the game had changed. She wasn't chasing Damon's secrets anymore. She was inside them. A knock at the door. Not loud. Not frantic. Just deliberate. 3 times, then silence. She didn't move. Didn't breathe. Then a note slid under the door. On plain paper. Typed text. "You need to leave. He's not who you think. Verona is not safe. Go to Florence. The real story is buried there." No name. No contact. Just one word at the bottom. R. Mia hesitated. She could stay. Wait for Damon. Try to make sense of the bloodlines and betrayals. Or she could find the truth herself. She packed only what she could carry. Took the locket. Left the file. And slipped out the back before sunrise. The train to Florence was quiet. Too quiet. Every time someone shifted in their seat, Mia tensed. At one point, a man in a black coat stood and walked toward her. but turned last second to use the restroom. Still, her skin crawled. This wasn't paranoia. It was memory. The way the restaurant had eyes. The way Damon had always been one step ahead. What if she was still inside his story? In Florence, the directions led her to an old bookstore tucked between two cafes. Dusty shelves. Smell of paper and rain. A woman at the counter looked up and said, "You're late." Mia blinked. "Do I know you?" "No," the woman said, "but I knew your father." She led Mia to the back, through a door, down a stairwell, and into a hidden archive. Newspapers, journals, contracts, photos, everything. "Your father didn't just leave Damon," the woman said. "He exposed him." What followed was a storm of information. Damon's early years. His first business in South Africa. A scandal buried by payoffs and partnerships. A whistleblower who vanished. Last seen at Hollow Pine, and at the center of it all, a ledger full of names, dates, and transactions. Some marked in red, including hers. "He's been tracking everyone connected to your father," the woman said. "You're not a love interest. You're an inheritance." Mia's hands trembled. But why the games? The lies? The woman closed the file and said, "Because Damon Carter doesn't just erase enemies. He rewrites them." Mia asked who the woman was. She hesitated, then pulled a chain from her blouse. At the end was a matching locket. "I was his sister, until Damon made me disappear." Mia opened her mouth to speak, but upstairs, the bell above the door rang. Someone had followed her. Footsteps echoed above, one set, measured, slow, not searching, approaching. The bookstore's owner, Damon's supposed sister, grabbed Mia's wrist and whispered, "Through the shelves. Go now." Mia slipped into the maze of stacked books and boxes. A hidden corridor led her to a narrow door behind a curtain of old maps. She slipped out into the alley, breath shallow, chest pounding. Behind her, the bell above the bookstore rang again, and then silence. 10 blocks away, in a noisy cafe, Mia finally breathed. The flash drive the woman had given her pulsed in her pocket. She didn't know what it held, but she knew it was the key to unraveling everything Damon had built. She plugged it into her laptop. Encrypted folders, dozens of them, but one stood out. Rewrite inside. Photos, videos, audio clips, all of her, but altered. One file had her speaking, words she'd never said. Another showed her smiling at a press conference she never attended. Digital forgeries. She was being fabricated, recast in a story she didn't write. Elliot Green, a fictional AI image forensics expert, had warned in a podcast, "The new currency isn't truth, it's believability. If someone can make the world believe a version of you that never existed, they own you, even if you're still breathing." Mia realized then, Damon wasn't just following her. He was rewriting her, preparing the world to accept a version of Mia Hollow that served his legacy. And once it was finished, the real her would be obsolete. She had to fight back. But how? She needed help. A voice louder than his. There was only one name left in the files that hadn't been redacted or buried. Jonas Kincaid, a journalist once disgraced for exposing a private tech empire. Blacklisted, ruined, forgotten. She found him living above a broken-down cinema in Marseille. The man who opened the door was gaunt, paranoid, and unshaven. But when Mia said Damon's name, his eyes sharpened. "He found you too." "Oh!" He led her in. Inside, the walls were covered in printed screenshots, physical photos and string maps. Jonas pointed to one wall labeled the Carter Spiral. At its center, a photo of Hollow Pine Inn. Underneath, her father's name, Damon's. Building a myth, Jonas explained. He's rewriting his own origin story. And now you're part of it. He plugged the drive into his system. His hands trembled as he opened the rewrite folder. Jesus, he muttered. This isn't just manipulation. This is full-spectrum identity overwrite. Jonas pulled out a faded envelope. Inside, a will, her father's will. The original version, never filed that it didn't name Mia as the sole heir. It named her as executor of a trust, one meant to fund safe recovery spaces for exploited workers, and the primary beneficiary, Damon Carter, but only if he remained uninvolved in corporate development. He'd violated that clause the moment he bought the restaurant. Mia's head spun. Damon wasn't protecting her legacy. He was stealing it, one step at a time. Her trust, her name, her voice. All pieces in a chess game she hadn't even known was being played. Jonas looked her in the eye. We expose this. You'll be hunted. He's already hunting me, Mia replied. But they had something Damon didn't expect. The original narrative. The will. The digital forgeries. Jonas's archived if they moved quickly. They could go public before he completed the overwrite. Jonas began compiling the files. Mia stepped outside to call the only lawyer she knew she could trust back in the U.S., but the moment she opened her phone, all signal vanished. Then it vibrated. Unknown number. You should have stayed out of this. Tick-tock, Mia. Asterisk. And when she turned around, Jonas was gone. Laptop smashed. Room empty, and on the wall, scrawled in red, there is no before. Only what I write next. Mia stood frozen. The smashed laptop. The blood on the floor. The message on the wall. A final warning. Or an invitation. There is no before. Only what I write next. This wasn't Damon hiding in the shadows anymore. This was him claiming the pen. She ran through the Marseille backstreets, heart hammering, unsure if Jonas was alive or dead. No police, no cameras, no witnesses, just silence, the kind that follows a scream that's never heard. Mia ducked into a hotel lobby, paid cash, changed clothes, checked into a room without windows. Then she opened the one thing Damon didn't know she still had. Her father's journal. It had been buried inside the Hollow Pine archives. She hadn't dared open it until now. Inside, pages of frustration, coded notes, and regret. But one phrase repeated again and again. The legacy is not the building. It's the girl. Mia turned the page and saw a hand-drawn diagram. Not of Hollow Pine, of Bayview Holdings. The entire shell structure Damon had used to hide his acquisitions. And at the center, a line drawn straight to Mia Hollow. Her father had built a failsafe, a trigger clause in the original foundation trust. If certain conditions were met, violation, fraud, digital impersonation, the trust ownership would revert entirely to the executor, to Mia. But only if she exposed the violations publicly. She didn't just have the right to take it back. She had the responsibility. Dr. Karen Holt, a fictional legal historian featured in high-profile inheritance disputes, once explained, legal mechanisms don't protect people. Stories do. If you want the law to work for you, you have to make the world believe in your version first, loudest, and with evidence. Mia had the story, but she didn't have the reach. Then she remembered something. Damon wasn't just building restaurants. He was building a brand. With PR teams, press releases, launch parties. And the next one was in New York, 2 days from now. She booked the first flight out, flew under a fake name, burner phone, no luggage, landed at JFK and vanished into the noise of the city. She knew where the launch was being held, the new flagship Hollow Pine in Midtown, a rooftop event, open bar, journalists, influencers, executives, and Mia planned to walk in with everything. Flash forward to the night of the event. Mia arrived in a waiter's uniform, stolen from a supply truck in her pocket, a drive. On that drive, the will, the forgery files, the audio clips from Jonas's backup cloud. She made her way to the AV booth. Passed unnoticed. Damon's voice played over the loudspeakers. Charming, rehearsed. This isn't just a restaurant. It's a revival. She smiled grimly. Let's see how revival tastes with a dose of reality. She plugged in the drive and clicked play all, and walked back into the crowd. The video played. The crowd turned. Murmurs erupted into gasps. Damon froze on stage, his eyes locking with hers across the room. She stood still, unblinking, unapologetic. Then, the lights cut. The screen went dark. A loud pop. The screams. Security rushed in. Someone grabbed Mia's arm, hard, dragged her through the kitchen, out the service door, into a black car. Doors slammed shut, and a voice whispered beside her. That was a mistake. She turned. It wasn't Damon. It was someone she hadn't seen since she was 13. Someone she never thought she'd see again. And he said, "You have no idea what you just started." The man beside her in the car wasn't a stranger. He was the uncle her mother warned her never to trust. The one who disappeared after her father's funeral. The one who was never spoken of again. Uncle Raymond. Except now, he wasn't drunk or broken. He was composed, clean-shaven, dressed like a power broker, and furious. "You don't know what you just broadcast," he hissed. That wasn't just Damon's lie. It was ours. Mia stared, stunned. "What are you talking about?" That was the truth. Raymond leaned in. There are truths that free people, and truths that destroy empires. Flashback. When Mia was 6, she remembered overhearing a fight between her father and Raymond. Words like fraud, shell companies, exposure. Her father had shouted, "This ends now. I'll bury the company if I have to." Raymond had replied with a threat so quiet she hadn't understood until now. "Then you'd better bury your daughter, too." Mia's eyes widened. "You were part of Bayview Holdings." "I built Bayview Holdings." Raymond snapped. Damon was just the mask. The air. The distraction. He exhaled slowly. "But you were the perfect blind spot. A nobody waitress. A sentimental token. We never thought you'd come this far." Mia clenched her fists. "You used my father. You used me." "No," he corrected. "You used yourself. The second you hired Damon to pretend to be your boyfriend, you created the lie. We just elevated it." Dr. Vanessa Rull, a fictional professor of narrative manipulation, once wrote, "The moment a person accepts a lie for convenience, they become its co-author. From there, the story is no longer theirs. It belongs to the system." Mia had to face it. The first lie hadn't come from Damon. It came from her. Hiring a fake boyfriend, faking a life to gain approval. And from that moment on, the story wrote itself. Raymond handed her a new envelope. Inside, a check. $5 million. With one line written below. "Walk away. This ends now." "And if I don't?" Mia asked. "Then we turn you into a ghost," he said. And the version we've built of you becomes real. He showed her a mock-up, a fake arrest record, a leaked scandal, a mental health crisis. One click, and your credibility evaporates. Mia laughed bitterly. You think this scares me? I've already been erased once. I came back stronger. She tore the check in half. You think Damon's the only one who knows how to play with legacy. You forgot where I was raised. Flashback again. Hollow Pine Inn. Her father teaching her how to balance books. Paper trails don't lie, he used to say. But you can make them sing if you know the rhythm. Mia pulled out the locket. Inside, a second chip. One Damon had hidden behind the photo. A backup. A last resort. The entire Bayview ledger. Unedited. Raw. Final. And with that chip, she could take down the entire structure. The car screeched to a halt. Raymond looked pale. You have no idea what this will cost you. Mia opened the door, turned to him. Maybe, but at least I'm the one writing it now. She stepped out onto a rainy New York street, soaked, breathless, electric, because this wasn't about restaurants anymore. It wasn't about revenge. This was a war over narrative itself, and the final chapter would be hers to write. Except when she returned to her hotel, the door was ajar. Inside, the room was empty, and on the bed, her father's journal, ripped apart, and 3 words scrawled across the sheets. He found her. He found her. The message burned into her brain as Mia stepped deeper into the ransacked hotel room. The curtains flapped, the lights flickered, and on the floor, her locket, cracked open. The chip inside, gone. But Damon hadn't left. Rage behind. He'd left choice. Taped to the mirror was a handwritten note. There's still time. But if you push that final file, everything ends. For all of us. You won. I surrender. But you still have to choose who you want to become. Flashback. The rooftop of Hollow Pine. Weeks ago, Damon had asked her a question. Do you want revenge? Or do you want to be remembered for something more than how it started? Back then, she didn't understand. Now, it made sense. Because this was never about ownership. It was about authorship, and Damon. He wasn't just a villain. He was a mirror, Dr. Ellis Byrne, a fictional narrative strategist hired by political campaigns, explains, a perfect villain is one who believes he's handing you control, while actually scripting your every move. The only way to win is to break character. Mia sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of her father's legacy, the pain, the lies, the empire she'd helped dismantle, and the future she could build in its place. She still had a copy of the ledger, a final version, uploaded to a secure server. One click, and the whole network would collapse. Bayview Holdings, Damon, Raymond, everything they touched. But with it, thousands of employees would lose jobs. Restaurants would shutter. Communities would collapse. The empire had rotted from the top, but the roots were in real people. People like her, so she made a new plan. She didn't destroy Bayview, she absorbed it, publicly, legally. The media exploded when the news broke. Mia Hollow takes control of controversial restaurant empire, but she didn't stop there. She opened the books, restructured the company, created a transparency board, donated her entire first-year salary to a workers' justice fund, and at the flagship reopening of Hollow Pine, she walked out on stage alone. No Damon, no Raymond, just her, wearing her father's old watch, a borrowed truth, and a name she finally owned. This isn't about a girl who pretended to be loved. she said to the crowd. This is about a woman who chose to be real. The applause was thunderous. But in the back row, someone stood silently, a man in a navy suit. No smile, just eyes that held 1,000 pages of unfinished story. Damon, he didn't approach, didn't speak, just nodded once, and left, because now, he didn't need to write her story anymore. She was writing it herself. Later that night, as Mia locked the doors of the restaurant, a courier handed her a package, no name, no note. Inside, the original chip untouched and a photo of her father and Damon, years ago, smiling. Underneath, one final message. You were always meant to finish what we started. And for the first time since that borrowed tuxedo, Mia smiled. Not because she'd won, but because she was finally free.